Good evening, everybody. This is Beyond the Buzzer for August 5th, 2021. I'm your host, Dane Thompson. Check with you live tonight on Facebook, YouTube, StreamYard, everywhere you can hear the sound of my voice. And for the next hour and a half, me and this guy to the right, no, it's not Kyle Nash, who's on vacation. Kyle, enjoy your vacation down in Myrtle Beach with the family. We'll check you back next week. But in his chair tonight, filling in for those big shoes, I got my main man from the three-point conversion. Well, I guess he's been knighted now as Sir Courtlandt Griffin. Courtlandt, what's going on, my man?
Nothing much, man. Just filling in for my spirit animal, Kyle Nash.
I mean, you know what? It's good. It's good that we always can use, different members of family on the three-point conversion family to step in and do the show tonight. And so, like I said, if you're in the chat, if you're on any of the social media platforms, please like, share, tag. Also, leave comments. We'll put them on the screen as well, too. So, Court and I are going to have a little bit of fun tonight. I mean, and before we get started having a little bit of fun, let's take a look at our also big shout outs to our sponsor, which is Valor, which should be over the Courtland's right shoulder at itsvalour.us for all things marketing, music, gifts, and big shout outs to my man DJ Five Venoms, who killed Rolling Loud for 3 days last weekend down in Miami. He's part of the Valor crew, so you got to go check those guys out if you're trying to get on somewhere. So, Courtlandt, speaking of getting on somewhere, listen, it's now August, and no, it's not. It's not time for changing of the leagues, but what it is time for is football season. So, Courtlandt, tonight is the very first NFL game of the season, and we're getting with the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're not going to talk too much about it because it's preseason. I mean, it's first preseason game, but
and it's
you got your Titans jersey
in the NFL.
You got your Titans jersey on. How excited are you knowing that we are literally weeks away from the start of the NFL season?
I'm super excited. You finally get to see what all the anticipation is, all the roster moves, all the guys and new acquisitions with any team. You finally get to see what they look like on the field and what they're going to do and how they're going to congeal together, what the camaraderie has breeded, padded practices. You finally get them to see them live hits against another team and not themselves. So I'm super excited. I'm always excited about football season, start of NFL football. You get to see what your predictions are panning out. Last year my bracket got pretty busted. So,
so Courtlandt, here's some of the things. What are some of the things you're looking forward to in the NFL season? I know you got the Titans jersey on, so I know everything. You're in the Nashville area as well too, and you're part of the day-to-day culture in Nashville. What is the excitement for Julio Jones? I mean, we've had him in Atlanta for years, but what is the excitement level for Julio Jones down in Nashville?
As soon as he was mentioned as a target, the city lit up. It's all you heard, and I know you guys were annoyed with me in the chat. I'm talking about it. I was like, Julio's coming. But as soon as he got off the plane and that Twitter feed hit and that image hit of him meeting Vrabel and Amy Armstrong on the tarmac and saying, I'm ready to go, instantly the buzz started. So the city, he's embraced the city. The city's embraced him. We're just ready to see number 2 on the field.
And here's the thing with Julio Jones, and one thing that I can say that you can get by being a Falcons fan for the last, I don't know, my entire lifespan. Julio Jones is going to bring it every play. When he's on the field, he's going to bring it. He blocks, he catches, he does everything you ask for him to do every single day. He's going to bring it every day. And the one question with Julio is, I've had this discussion with Kyle, is how is it going to work in the offense? A team that's dependent on Derrick Henry. And how would that work with Julio Jones and AJ Brown under a new offensive coordinator? You don't have much time to gel. You didn't really have any OTAs. You didn't have a lot of the things that you normally have. It's another COVID year, ladies and gentlemen. But are you confident that this team will have everything it needs when we kick off in a couple of weeks?
I do. I believe if you look at the issues that a lot of people are saying about the offense, in particular, last year, what happened with us, we got one-dimensional, and teams were able to capitalize off that one dimension. because outside of A.J. Brown, Corey Davis was your next best guy. You didn't have any depth at the wide receiver position. Adam Humphries was pretty much on his last leg in Tennessee, and the other receivers were pretty much cannon fodder. Now you have Julio Jones, Josh Reynolds, Dez Fitzpatrick, Racing McMath has turned some heads in camp. So A.J. Brown, of course. So you got two alpha dogs on the outside, and then you got the big man in the backfield that you can hand it off to. So Tannehill is in a very good situation. I think the offense is going to have everything that it needs. The only thing we're worried about now is the defense.
And speaking of things in defense, when you look at around the league, Courtland, let's look at some of the things that were defensively real quick while we're still speaking about the NFL. Are you worried about not only Tennessee's defense, but is there any other teams that you're concerned with on the defensive side of the ball around the league that might prevent them from winning a Super Bowl? For me, I'm having concerns with the Seattle Seahawks defense being able to stop, basically keep teams off the scoreboard so Russell Wilson does that throw 50 points a game. Is there a defense in the league that kind of scares you that might prevent them from potentially winning a Super Bowl?
There's two. And I don't know if they're Super Bowl contenders. I wouldn't say that they're Super Bowl contenders, but I think defense for these two teams is going to be prime for their improvement. The Cowboys, for one. You're linebacker heavy. If you're a Cowboys fan, your team is linebacker heavy. You got Michael Parsons. You have Leighton Vander Esch. All of those guys. You got the Wolf Hunter. So you got all of these guys. Michael Parsons has taken one of those positions. So how do you fit the other two in? And they're over. And if Brown is out, then he's overpaid because now you got Michael Parsons on a rookie contract. If Leighton Vander Esch can't stay healthy, then that's a waste of a first round pick that because he's not going to see his potential. He turns into Sean Lee 2.0.
The word Micah Parsons is very, very sensitive to me because as a Falcons fan, for those who watch the show long enough, I want Atlanta to take Micah Parsons at 4. Parsons coming off the outside is going to be an insane pass rusher. Now, as much as mind you, I love Kyle Pitts, by the way, knowing that we don't have Julio Jones. And I'm not trying to compare Kyle to Julio Jones, but it's a playmaker down the field. Man, Michael Parsons is going to be something special. If Dallas can figure out how to get him to the pass rusher, get him the quarterback and let him use his pass rushing skills, he's a phenomenal athlete.
The second one, the second team is Atlanta. I just feel like if they can get that defense, if Arthur Smith can get that defense molded around and buy into a defensive mindset, even though he's an offensive coach, if he can do kind of the Brian Billick thing, where Brian Billick was an offensive coach but had a hell of a defense. So if Arthur Smith can do that, Atlanta improves, and there's no reason to believe that they're not second in that division.
Listen, if Deion Jones does anything like Ray Lewis in Baltimore with Brian Billick, I would be doing the Harlem Shake.
He has the ability.
I mean, the one thing with Atlanta is that Atlanta has never had a defense that's worth anything anywhere. They've been 22nd or worse in the NFL in literally every single year in the last 10 for the most part, including the Super Bowl year of Matt Ryan. So I mean, I think it's the only year Atlanta was not 22nd or worse in defense was the year we got to the Super Bowl.
The year they got to the Super Bowl, though, that defense actually played better than their rankings said.
It was average. And that's all Atlanta's needed for years is an average defense because the offense could score. Now, with only just Calvin Ridley on the outside, the pure outside, and not having Julio Jones to be able to take the pressure off Calvin Ridley, we're really going to see how good Calvin Ridley is as a number one receiver.
And then didn't you guys sign Mike Davis in the backfield?
Yeah, Mike Davis from Carolina. It's going to be a 2-year, I think, $6 million contract. He's going to provide a lot, hopefully a consistent running game like he did in Carolina when he was given the opportunity of the ball. He wasn't going to see him much this year with Christian McCaffrey being healthy. So Davis is he's a bargain guy. Atlanta had to bargain shop. They had to spend money in the bargain bin. Okay, they had to go bargain bin basement hunting. And you know what, Courtland, that's a perfect segue into bargain basement hunting, because we did talk NFL to start the show, but let's really talk about what's really been on everybody's mind, and that's been the NBA over the last, I don't know, since free agency started on Monday. It has been a whirlwind for a lot of teams. And Courtland, we talked about bargain basement. And for those who never know, Courtland is the Nashville chapter president of the Los Angeles Lakers fan club. All right, aka the LeBron James fan club. Courtland, when you looked at the beginning of the NBA year for the Lakers, after what they've gone through, at the end of last season with injuries to LeBron James and Anthony Davis, they got sent home in the first round. The first time it's ever happened to LeBron James. In all these years in the NBA, he's never lost in the first round. Like, it was almost Undertaker WWE, not a mania type of streak in the first round. The Lakers were a lot of uncertainty. I mean, as of right now, you went Sunday night and you didn't realize what was going on, and now you're in Thursday night in the hot seat. How do you feel about your Lakers now? And then I'll give my thoughts about it in a second after that. What are your thoughts on the Lakers?
So, to use an analogy, we've all been to Walmart. We've all gone back to the electronics section and seen the big $5 bin of DVDs. Mm-hmm. You always find a couple of good gems in that $5 bin, and that's what the Lakers did. The Lakers went out and found gems in the $5 bin. Then they went over to the classics, oldest but goodies, $10 DVDs and got Kendrick Nunn. They got the recent movie that didn't have good theater ratings, but it was good enough for you to have it in your DVD collection. So I think what they've done, if they went and got guys that are going to buy into the Lakers system, they're going to buy into the Laker legacy. You got Kent Bazemore, he's wore purple and gold. Wayne Ellington, he's wore purple and gold. Trevor Ariza knows what it is to have a championship and win one in the city. Dwight Howard knows what it is to wear the purple and gold and win a championship in the city. So I think what they did was they filled all the holes that they needed. They got the shooting and spacing. They got a point guard that can distribute, who's athletic, who still can score when LeBron is off the floor. And then you got a young point guard and a young two guard, or combo guard, I should say, and Malik Monk and Kendrick Nunn that bring the fire off the bench. So, yeah. Like Carlos said, I like the Malik Monk and Wayne Ellington signings. I do too. I love them.
Big shout out to my main man Carlos Johnson with his show, the Black White Podcast. I've been on there a couple of times. Carlos is my main guy out in Kansas City. Check out his podcast, Carlos. I'll put it in the chat and I'll make sure it gets on screen. And Raphael Haynes from the 3-point conversion. Yes, I did call you by your government name today, sir. Just give it a shout out. Give it a big shout out to the chat as well too. So here's the thing with the Lakers signings. All right, you mentioned the fact of they went and they got their birthday money. They had $50. They spent $45 on Russell Westbrook, but they still wanted more gifts. So they went to the Dollar Tree, essentially. Wayne Ellington at the bargain bin for is a great addition. Like you mentioned, outside shooting, something the Lakers didn't even have last year. If you look at the Lakers roster last year, what they had on the outside, you're asking Anthony Davis when he was on the floor, LeBron James to be a 3-point shooter. Caruso was solid at times. THT, the numbers kind of balanced out, but he was kind of hit and miss. So really, you were banking on KCP
is your base.
Yeah, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was your main guy because you remember Danny Green had left for Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So you got Wayne Ellington, which was one thing, and then on top of that, they went and got Kent Bazemore, a guy who can defend from the wings. That's two. They went and got Trevor Ariza, one like you mentioned before, a guy that's been with the Lakers before. He knows what he does, and another 3-and-D wing. So obviously at this point, the Lakers are getting 3-and-D wings to be able to help LeBron James transition into the power forward position. I'll get to that in a second. They brought back Dwight Howard, which I think was a perfect fit behind Marc Gasol in the older age backcourt, the older age front court of centers, because you got to have old people in the front court. And then they went and got Malik Monk. Monk is a guy that I covered last year plus in Charlotte. And the one thing of Malik Monk is, as we saw when he got playing time, he's extremely streaky. Now, go back to that Miami game last year. He's had a couple of games, the Sacramento game, where Monk would just go completely nuts. And he can hit shots. He is to LeBron in this case what J.R. Smith was to LeBron in Cleveland.
Definitely.
He can be that type of player that he can catch fire and he goes off. But if he's not hitting, don't ask him to do much more than that. Okay. He struggles with defense. He's like I say, he's just a guy that has to get playing time. But to me, and the best sign the Lakers got, you mentioned, was they re-signed THT, was the fact of bringing in Kendrick Nunn. Kendrick Nunn turned down more money from other teams, such as the Knicks, among other teams, to go play for, like you said, the purple and gold. Nunn does fill the backup point guard position. And the thing is, he won't be scared to shoot. He's a very good shooter from the floor. I think he shot 48% from the floor, almost 40% from behind deep, and he actually put points on the board until he got benched late down the stretch of the season. I think working with LeBron James, you have to have a certain type of personality. I think the Lakers did really well for what they had. Like you mentioned, and then there's news that today that Andre Iguodala, Sham Sharina is reporting that Andre Iguodala is down to playing for potentially Los Angeles Lakers as one of his 3 choices in free agency signing, which allows the Lakers to, guess what, add another guy to the wing. Right. Now, one of the things with the Lakers is that they have a big 3, because that seems to be the growing trend. Their big 3 is now Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. I'm not a big fan of this. I'm not a big fan of this trio. I'm not. Courtlandt, convince me that this is the right way of doing it, because it doesn't seem like this is a good idea.
The reason why I think it is a good idea, the reason why I say this could work, is because if you look traditionally at LeBron James-led teams, they go to crap when he comes off the bench or when he goes to the bench. What Russell Westbrook is able to do, if you look at him in OKC, he led a team on his back, won games when they shouldn't have. Goes to Washington, team on his back, won games when they shouldn't have. He's going to be that steadying force for when LeBron James takes his rest at the end of the second quarter, beginning of the third. He's going to put up points. He's going to facilitate the ball. He's going to get his. Everyone's talking about the shooting, but big 3s don't always drive. They're not always in the driver's seat. Everyone has a role. And if Russell Westbrook can accept, which he seems like he has from the reports of the conversation that they had at LeBron James' house, at his palatial estate, where LeBron James said, I'll play power forward, and Russell Westbrook said, I don't care what I have to do as long as I win a championship, then this team is going to work out. If not just for the personalities, talent overcomes holes and gaps. So what you can do is you can have all 3 on the floor. Move LeBron James to the 4, move Anthony Davis to the 5, allow Russell Westbrook to orchestrate the offense, and then you put 2 shooters out there with him. Anthony Davis can still shoot the ball outside. LeBron James can still shoot the ball outside. Logo Bron still exists. And Russell Westbrook has shown the propensity, regardless of what the numbers show, to hit big shots when you need big shots. But if he just says, I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to attack the rim because I'm one of the best attackers of the rim at the guard position, then his team works.
And now here's the part where I disagree with here. Okay, we all know when you look at on paper, Westbrook, Braun, AD, you have 3 of the top 25 players in the league. You can't even argue against that not being the top 25. The problem is when LeBron James has had trios. You go back to Cleveland, you go back even to Miami. They've always been able to, one player is able to do something that the other players can't. LeBron's Mr. All Around, but nothing is like I'm going to blow you away with.
Yeah, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah. And LeBron and Anthony Davis is arguably the best inside out power forward we've seen in years. But what does Russell Westbrook do different? Yes, he gets other people involved, but that's what LeBron does. Yes, he grabs rebounds, but so does Anthony Davis. He's not a long-range shooter. He gets to the rim, but that's what LeBron James does. You go back to Miami. The difference between Wade and LeBron was Wade was stopping you defensively, and Wade also had the ability to get to the rim and get to the free throw line. it was kind of different because Bosh was kind of the pick and pop guy, and even in Cleveland, Kyrie was able to take you off the dribble and shoot from anywhere on the court, and Kevin Love grabbed rebounds and shot threes. I just wonder, and we saw Russell Westbrook. I wonder will Westbrook will give into LeBron at the end of the games, and can LeBron trust Westbrook to knock down shots at the end of the games? That's the issue I have.
So here's my counter to that. You said, what does Russell Westbrook do that the other two don't? He pushes it hard from opening tip off to triple zeros. LeBron James, we know, has to take his rest, and Anthony Davis is liable to go down with a calf injury at any point in time, or any injury,
or he falls down with wind blows. I got you, but continue.
Yeah. So when either one of those two guys are off the court, the reason that what killed them last year was LeBron James and Anthony Davis had to play absorbent amount of minutes because they didn't have anyone around them. Now you have a guy, you can take LeBron James off the court and Russell Westbrook goes above and beyond. Anthony Davis comes off the court, you still got a rebounder. You still got a guy who can get to the rack, and you surround it with shooters. So if you play small ball, the Lakers can do kind of a watered-down version of what Miami did when LeBron was there. They can play two different lineups and play two different styles of basketball with the guys that they have, because people forget Carmelo is the wild card in all of this.
And we didn't mention Carmelo Anthony in all of this, and that's a great analogy for Carmelo. Here's the thing. If Russell Westbrook were to turn into the Lakers version of what James Harden does for Brooklyn, because we had these same chemistry issues in figuring out how the basketball is going to work in Brooklyn. But James Harden's like, you know what? I'll let everybody else score. I'll make sure everybody else gets distributed. I'll make my touches here and there. If Russell Westbrook were to do, what's up, Mike? Look at this. But if Russell Westbrook is able to do for the Lakers what James Harden did for Brooklyn, then you know what? This will work. I just don't know, because the thing with James Harden is that Harden can hit from the outside, and you're right. There's going to be nights where LeBron's not going to play heavy duty minutes because you can't after this time. Anthony Davis will go down at some point in time, so Westbrook's going to have to carry the team. And you mentioned pushing the pace. The Lakers are kind of old here. I don't see Westbrook pushing no pace with these old guys. All right. This is the oldest team in the NBA, even with the guys they signed with Nunn and Malik Monk. This is the oldest team in the NBA. All right. I don't want to admit it. The last time the Lakers pulled this oldness was 2004. And Courtlandt, what happened in 2004?
They lost in the finals.
Exactly.
But here's the difference between those two teams. There's a difference between these two teams, and you can maybe you might agree with this. That team got ate up by injuries. They win that final series if Malone is healthy. They win that final series if their front court is healthy. Because if I remember that correctly, I think Shaq was hobbled a little bit too. So that team was marred by injury. But also, those two old guys on that team, one was in the front court, one was in the back court, and we all know no point guard thrived outside of Derek Fisher with Kobe in the backcourt. So LeBron James is not in the backcourt, even though he plays backcourt style basketball. He's not in the backcourt. Russell Westbrook has a perfect marriage between Anthony Davis and LeBron James, and he kind of slots in there. And like you said, if he can be a facilitator, do what he does best when LeBron James is off the floor, or even if when LeBron James is on the floor and just shares the sugar just a little bit, all three of these guys can go for 20 at any point in time.
I mean, I kind of agree with some of those points, but I think this is kind of the best time to do it for the Lakers. Because if you look at the rest of the landscape of the Western Conference, it's kind of in the Lakers' favor now. When I say it's kind of in the Lakers' favor, look at the rest of the teams in the West. All right, you have the defending champion Phoenix Suns, who return basically everybody. All right, they bring back Frank Kaminsky. They Saric is back. They brought back Cameron Payne. Chris Paul resigned. Now, mind you, to me, they got one of the 2 or 3 best under-the-radar acquisitions in the offseason by bringing in JaVale McGee for $5 million. A guy who's going to rebound, set screens, do everything Chris Paul would need you to do. The Suns are for real. The question is Chris Paul's body's going to hold up? At some point, Father Time is always won. It ain't here Chris Paul yet, just in the playoffs. But when is it going to be that time? Is Devin Booker, I mean, we all know how good Devin Booker is, but is DeAndre Ayton ready to take that next step forward? We saw glimpses of it in the playoffs. He went missing after game 1 of the finals.
He had the Butterfingers in the finals.
Listen, I don't know what it was. He reverted back to rookie DeAndre Ayton in the rest of the part of the finals. Then you also have the Denver Nuggets. They have the league's MVP in Nikola Jokic. They get a full season of Aaron Gordon. They brought back Will Barton. They also added JaMychal Green. They also added Uncle Jeff Green. The only thing they didn't have was bring on the roster was the color of Crayola Green. They bring back everybody else, but here's the problem. Jamal Murray's injured, and he won't be back until probably sometime in January or after the first of the year. So Denver might not be at 100% the entire season. I love Frank Capazio, by the way. You go to Utah. They brought back Mike Conley. They sent Derek Favors to Oklahoma City. Just let him go away. But they added Eric Pascal yesterday. I love the Eric Pascal addition from Utah, or from Golden State. A guy, to me, Courtlandt, what do you think about this? Eric Pascal to the Jazz, he could turn into this team's version of what Paul Millsap was when Millsap was in Utah. He could step into that Paul Millsap power forward role. And you got to think, because they're starting I'm sorry, I can't even call him Royce O'Neal. They're starting Buckets O'Neal at power forward. Okay, not to be confused with Patches O'Houlihan from Dodgeball, but they're starting Royce O'Neal at power forward. So Pascal can come and actually start at power forward to play next to Rudy Gobert, and they also added Hassan Whiteside. It ain't saying much. It's not saying much. Okay, those are the teams, and then we haven't mentioned the Clippers. Why we haven't mentioned the Clippers? Kawhi Leonard's holding this franchise hostage on what his quote-unquote future is, but he's going to miss the majority of all next season because he has a knee injury.
Definitely.
They still haven't re-signed Reggie Jackson, and because Kawhi is doing what Kawhi is doing, the Clippers can't do anything in the offseason.
Nope. He's holding him hostage.
And then Serge Ibaka's hurt, but he wasn't going to opt out and leave $10 million on the table. He wasn't going to do that. It's not looking good in Whoville for the Clippers at this point. Mike Patton in the chat has mentioned about Hassan Whiteside. Hassan is good. I mean, I think he's good. If he's focused, he can play. Okay, Mike, I love you, Mike. You're my dog, Mike. Check out Mike Patton's show, touring the AFC South all throughout the week. Guests are everywhere. But Mike, when was the last time Hassan Whiteside was focused? When he was trying to get a check in Miami.
Yeah, his early years in Miami.
That's the last time he was fully focused on a complete season. He went to Portland, played well. Yusuf Nurkic got back in the lineup. He pounded his way right back to the bench. It is what it is. Now, Mike also asked the chat, what about, are they going to bring Reggie Jackson back? Courtlandt?
You hope so.
Who will sign him? Nobody has money at this point. Nobody has the money to sign Reggie Jackson at this point in the offseason. Reggie Jackson is going to be a Clipper.
It's also a really bad market for point guards too. So, I mean, you look at Reggie Jackson, he has no choice but to go back to the Clippers. Like, Dennis Schroeder has no market. So, because teams are pretty much set at the point guard position around the league at this point. Yes,
and for those who don't know, Mike Patton is the actual he's actually claiming of the Reggie Jackson President fan club. And if you join that fan club, you do get a free Detroit Pistons Reggie Jackson bobblehead.
And a Bobby Shmurda poster.
and a cassette single downloaded from Napster. All right, but what I'm saying is, when you mention the market and you mentioned one guy, Dennis Schroeder. Here's the thing: Reggie Jackson, I don't think was ever going to go anywhere else. He loves being in LA. He loves being a Clipper. He's from the area. It was the right fit. The Clippers couldn't go add anybody because they're in the tax at this point. So letting him go for nothing is the issue. We mentioned before Serge Ibaka holding this team hostage when it comes to salary. Luke Kennard has got a big contract and did next to nothing.
So here's my thing, and I said this when Luke Kennard was signed. What has he done outside of a decent season
in Detroit.
in Detroit?
Well, we're going to find out because with Kawhi Leonard missing most of next season, Luke Kennard's going to have to go into the starting line because Paul George is going to have to move back to small forward to take care of that. Now, they do get Marcus Morris back, and I think Zubac is a really underrated center. They got to bring back Reggie. They got to bring back Reggie Jackson. Otherwise, this team is going to fall apart. As much as I love rookie Jason Preston from Ohio, I think he's going to be really good when given a lot of playing time. Ain't no rookie ready for. He's not ready for this. This ain't Ohio. All right.
Now,
this is not Ohio.
Rondo going to be there next year?
Who knows? Rondo.
Because my question is, do they trust Rondo more than they trust Reggie Jackson?
Rondo's not. Listen, without Kawhi Leonard, you're going to need people to put points in the basket, ball in the basket. That's what you're going to need. Rondo's not doing it. Now, if you bring Rondo back off the bench, that's perfectly fine. You got Patrick Beverly. Y'all let them all fight it out. But Reggie Jackson, if Reggie Jackson, we know, does one thing, Reggie Jackson goes and gets buckets. It might not be efficient, but he puts the ball in the basket. And when you don't have 25 points a game in Kawhi Leonard every single night, somebody has to make this up somehow. Kennard's going to get some open looks, but Reggie Jackson has shown, as he did in the playoffs last year, I'm hoping it's not a fluke, that he can get it done. But in the hands of the Lakers, and we'll talk about Schroeder in a second, the top teams in the West haven't really distinguished themselves in the offseason. What did Dallas do? I mean, what has Dallas done, Courtland?
Not much that I know that I've heard as of right now.
I mean, they re-signed Tim Hardaway Jr. They brought back Boban. They brought back everybody with the exception of they got Reggie Bullock from New York. Now
that's what I was looking at. They brought back Boban, and I guess I kind of overlooked Dallas because it's Dallas,
and it's the same team.
Yeah, it's like the re-signings. There was nothing new. There's no fireworks or flair, but they keep the continuity there. So,
but what does the continuity give? You can't get out of the first round of the playoffs. Here's okay. You know what? That's going to lead us into winning is most important. So Courtland, as we look at we look at winning and losing at this point. Let's talk about winners and losers in free agency. Before we go through every single team, Courtland, we are now 5 days into free agency, and guess what? Players can officially sign contracts tomorrow because it's New Year's Day in the NBA, and it's a brand new NBA season. I think after 3:00 tomorrow, players can sign contracts. So in the quote unquote quiet period in the NBA, Courtland, who is your top three winners, and who is your major loser so far in free agency? And I'll give mine as well.
My top three winners, we've talked about them. The Los Angeles Lakers. I have to go with the Miami Heat too, a team that's getting really overlooked from the moves that they've made. And then also the Chicago Bulls, in my opinion, are big winners because they have a 5-guard rotation that they can throw out there and kill you. Zach LaVine is a walking bucket. DeMar DeRozan, a bucket. Given it's from the mid-range. And then you have Kobe White, who has the potential to become a great all-around combo guard. They also signed Lonzo, great defender, great facilitator, and he also improved his shot. And then you bring in Alex Caruso from LA, who is one of my early favorites for Sixth Man of the Year. So,
who's your loser?
My losers are Dennis Schroeder, the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Timberwolves. For this to be a moratorium period, the quiet period, as you say, or the quiet before the storm, they didn't even get rumored to look at a player. Like, at least throw your name out there. You're the worst team in the NBA. And you didn't even throw your name in the pot. I don't care if you didn't have a chance. Throw your name in the pot.
All right, so it's interesting. So here are my winners and losers. So if I'm gonna give three winners, I think you mentioned the Los Angeles Lakers. Listen, they didn't have much to spend, but you said Carmelo Anthony, Malik Monk, Wayne Ellington, Kent Bazemore, Dwight Howard, you all got for basically you got them you got them from the dollar store. You got them all from the candy from the dollar store. And then you got Kendrick Nunn, with the snack cake, and then you went and got Russell Westbrook for the frozen pizza. So you got everything you need to basically snack your house up for the entire time. So you got to give them the Lakers a lot of credit. Here's a team that no one's talking about, and I think they've won I think they're a big win in the offseason, is the New York Knicks. Here's the reason why the Knicks are a winner. The Knicks only lost Reggie Bullock. Re-signed Nerlens Noel, re-signed Alec Burks, re-signed Derrick Rose. Then they went and got Kemba Walker on the buyout market because he wasn't going to last Oklahoma City, and they freed him. Kemba Walker used to go home, and instead of paying him that insanely salary, they're only paying him $8 million to be a starting point guard. Remember, Kemba was off the ball last year, and he still averaged 19 and 5. He was averaging 19 and 5 as a third option behind Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And Kemba gets to go home. Exactly. The crowd goes wild. So then they went and got Evan Fournier to do one thing Evan Fournier does better. If you've watched the Olympics, FIBA Fournier is a real thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Fournier is a guy that I've watched him play in Orlando for years, covering the Magic. If one thing Evan Fournier likes to do, he wants the ball in his hands, and he likes to shoot at the end of the game. All right. The Knicks didn't have that in the playoffs. As we learned in the playoffs, as great as Julius Randle was in the regular season, where the hell was he in the playoffs? You couldn't find him. Okay, he was a milk carton for the majority of that series against Atlanta.
I don't think his skill set, not to cut you off, Danny, I don't think his skill set is fit to be the lead guy on a championship roster.
But the thing was, he played like it all season long to go missing on a milk carton. RJ Barrett did everything he could, even though it wasn't much in the process. The Knicks have upgraded everywhere. I think, and for what the bargain basement things they've done, they did an outstanding job. Like I said, I mean, you might question Fournier's salary, but you got to use it somehow. But getting Kemba Walker at $8 million, I look at that as like the same thing as I look at JaVale McGee when it comes to a great winning move in the offseason. The third team that won the offseason, listen, people down in Miami might hate the whole. You know what? I have a tie for third. People hate the Miami signing of Kyle Lowry, but I love it. Here's why I love it. Miami has done one thing that the rest of the Eastern Conference can't do. They can put on the court 5 guys who can defend. And when you're dealing with the Brooklyn Nets, because that's arguably the Boston end of this, no offense to Milwaukee, who's the defending champions, but Brooklyn, when healthy, is the Boston of the Eastern Conference. Now, Miami can go toe-to-toe defensively with Brooklyn. On top of adding Kyle Lowry, they went and made sure Jimmy Butler got paid. You paid Jimmy buckets. They brought back their sharpshooter, Duncan Robinson, but they also went out and re-signed Victor Oladipo for the minimum, who is looking for a paycheck. All right? Lowry's money might be big, but guess what? It is what it is. He's an upgraded point guard. They're going to miss Goran Dragic, who will be redirected. Either it's going to be to Toronto or potentially Dallas, and depending on how this works out with the on Friday, we'll see what the full thing is. But they lost Kendrick Nunn, which is fine, but Tyler Hero goes back to being a 6 man. He can go back to being dangerous off the bench. All right? He don't have to be a starter.
Which is huge.
He can go back to being in rap videos again and worry about playing 6-man minutes. Okay? They've improved everywhere across the board. I love what Miami – and then they got PJ Tucker. You talk about toughness. You talk about a playoff series when you have – what PJ Tucker did in that playoff series to Kevin Durant worked for every basket he could in that playoffs. Every basket.
Which is why I love the pickup of PJ Tucker. And what I was saying is I don't know why. I don't know why Miami fans don't like the pickup of Kyle Lowry. If you watch Toronto basketball, that dude is the heart and soul. He's bringing that now to Miami.
And the thing is, Jimmy Butler, he's not the best shooter in the world. We all know that. But Jimmy Butler is hard. Kyle Lowry can knock down shots. And he also can create. And the one thing I wish Miami would have done was they would have got a center, because I think Bam Adebayo is better at power forward than he is at center.
I believe that. But the thing about Bam for me is if he can knock down the 18 footer, 18 like 15 to 18 footer, then I'll put him at power forward.
I think he can. He can.
I think he's versatile enough at the center spot where he causes issues and causes problems. And like Mike said, they brought in Dwayne Dedman as well. So they did bring in size. PJ Tucker, when you're able to poach any player from a championship roster, but not only a player, a key player. PJ Tucker was a key player for Milwaukee. He didn't score much, but like you said, his defense, the defense he played on Devin Booker was amazing. And then also one of the reasons, and I spoke about it yesterday, PJ Tucker is a guy who's in a way a smaller Charles Barkley. You're not going to move him out the way. And he's going to front you. He's going to get up under you. He's going to put his arm on your hip. He's going to put his weight on you. And he can grab rebounds and knock down the corner three. It fits right into what Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra want to do in Miami.
And like I said, I think you adding all those type of personalities, I think it's tough-minded. Like I said, Jimmy Butler is a grinded-out guy. So what do? You go get guys around him who's going to grind it with him. He's got a foxhole with PJ Tucker and Kyle Lowry. Lowry's taking charges everywhere on the court. That's huge in the playoff series. When your starting point guard is willing to put his body out there.
Can you imagine what those practices are going to be like?
Listen, Jimmy Butler and freaking PJ Tucker are going to go out in the playoffs now and put in practice. I'm going to love every minute of it. I had a chance to be down there. Big shout out to my main man, EJ Christian and David Ramel, who were down there in Miami. Here's the other team I think is won the offseason. People don't talk about this, but the Washington Wizards have actually had a really, really good offseason.
Yeah.
Listen, they let Russell Westbrook go to LA. He's with your Lakers. But look what they turned Russell Westbrook into. Spencer Dinwiddie, Kyle Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They've addressed every position on the court. They added a point guard, Dinwiddie, who also can get buckets, but he's actually an underrated playmaker. All right,
and a great defender.
He's actually solid for a defender, coming off an ACL injury, but I think he'll be fine. They added Kuzma, who needed a change of scenery. Get him out of the LA spotlight and let him go back to where he was as a rookie. Okay? They didn't have to trade Deni Avdija in any trade to go get Spencer Dinwiddie, but then they added a center to Montrezl Harrell, who's going to be a perfect fit next to Thomas Bryant when he becomes healthy, and even Daniel Gafford, who had a great second half of the season with Russell Westbrook. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope will also defend, and he can play multiple positions. The Clippers, the Wizards actually did well with it not having too much money in the offseason or to be major players. They did really well for what they had. And like I said, you turn Russell Westbrook into five guys that's going to be in a rotation. You get a healthy Bradley Beal. Get back at the stint he had with COVID with Team USA. You finally get him back. You have Rui Hachimura. Like I said, you mentioned Deni Avdija. Then you have they got the best shooter in the draft in Kispert from Gonzaga.
Yeah.
They have a nice look, and they have a new coach in Wes Unseld. I'm not saying Washington's going to win the NBA championship, but they're going to be pretty darn entertaining this year.
And I think they're going to win a lot of games that you would normally count them out of. Montrezl Harrell is a dog. Kuzma, I think, can go back to playing free.
Yes.
I think he thrived up under the pressure of playing with LeBron for as long as he could. Foundation only works under pressure for so long before it starts to crumble. And I think now he can play free again. KCP is going to fit into his role as a bench player and not so much as a high-paid starter. So I think now this Washington team has more balance than it did last year. And they might look reminiscent of the year where they were like the third or fourth seed when they had John Wall, Beal, and all those guys, Gortat. I'm not going to push to be that high as a seeding wise because the East is loaded all the way around. No, I'm not saying they're going to be that,
but they'll be just irritating.
Yeah, I think they're going to be reminiscent of that.
I think if Dinwiddie, if Spencer can go back to the form he had before he got hurt when Kyrie was hurt in Brooklyn, they're going to be fun to watch. Now, to me, the losers in free agency, like you mentioned, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota is a mess right now. All right, the problem with Minnesota is that we don't know what their roster, the potential of the roster, because D'Angelo Russell and Karl-Anthony Towns haven't been healthy long enough together to figure this out. They still got Anthony Edwards. You got Malik Beasley. They got young guys. But it's bad that their first round pick ended up being in Oakland this year, in the draft trade. So the team I thought that to me that lost free agency to this part. If the Clippers re-sign Kawhi and Reggie Jackson, then they'll be fine. But to me, the loser in free agency, listen, it's the Portland Trailblazers. And here's the reason why. They paid Norman Powell a big 5-year, $90 million contract. They paid him. The problem is Norman Powell, for as good as defender he is 6'4", and that means he's going to have to play small forward because CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard are your backcourt. They lost Carmelo Anthony. They lost Zach Collins. That's going to hurt. I think they lost Rodney Hood as well too. They lost all those guys.
And it's the fact that you lost Carmelo for nothing.
Well, I mean, listen, you wasn't going to get much for him. We tried to trade him anyway, but they also Enes Kanter back to Boston. They lost a lot of pieces. They brought in Cody Zeller. That's not moving no needles. Okay, if you're Damian Lillard and you're looking over and you're 1 game away from a gold medal, which we'll talk about Team USA in just a second, and you're seeing this because you say you want to evaluate this roster, this don't look pretty. You're going back, and Portland's worse than what they were last year.
Yep.
You mentioned Dennis Schroeder before we start talking about Team USA and the market for Dennis Schroeder, Kelly Oubre, and Lauri Markkanen. Here is the issue with all 3 of these guys, why they haven't signed contracts. Well, in the case of Dennis Schroeder, Cortland's Lakers offered him $21 million a season for 4 years back in December, and he was like, nah, no thank you, I'm going to test the open market. We get to the open market part of the phase, and the German Federation believes that Dennis Schroeder is worth $100 million. I'm not sure what Willy Wonka fantasy of chocolate bars that he thought he was getting $100 million in this market. Because Courtland, let's count how many players got $100 million contracts. Luka Doncic, Trae Young, Jimmy Butler,
John
Collins, Chris Paul, Julius Randle.
And then if you want to count Steph Curry's re-up for 200. Yeah.
Kyle, Courtland, what do those 7 players have in common?
They're all stars.
With the exception of John. No, what they are, they're actually guys that actually contribute on a major basis. Collins would have been an all-star, but he sacrificed his numbers to make Atlanta a better team.
Yeah. But they also produced in the playoffs last year.
Yes, and Collins
except for Steph Curry.
Well, listen, Steph Curry did everything in the playing game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Steph Curry and Golden State wasn't that good last year, but those guys were all all-star caliber players. Dennis Schroeder is nowhere near an all-star caliber player, so in this market, with nobody having money like that, asking for $100 million is kind of a stretch.
Well, when you have a playoff series where you have 3 or more games with sub 5 points, I mean, you can't make a shot to save your life when your team needed it. And here's what killed Dennis Schroeder. You were the 6th man of the year not last year, but year before that in OKC. You were 6th man of the year. The Lakers bring you in to play a role. You walk into that locker room with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kyle Kuzma, KCP, a championship banner. Those guys have jewelry. And you tell them, I'm not a backup. I'm your starter. And then you go out and you have a couple of good games here and there. You have a couple of good plays here and there. And then you get to the playoffs when it really matters. And you turn into Atlanta Dennis Schroeder. So it was almost like you killed your momentum before it started. If you came in and you said, hey, I'm just here to buy into the system. I'm here to get this team a championship. I'm here to play my role. And then that happened. Maybe the team says, okay, the Lakers may not have been the fit for him. Maybe we can get the most out of him. But since you said you were the starter, and now your attitude is he thinks he's a starter, No one's going to pay you that $100 million contract, and no one's going to offer you 85. So,
well, in the case of Dennis Schroeder, here's what happened. You mentioned some good points a second ago. Dennis Schroeder in the Lakers, there was some issues with the coaching staff and what Dennis Schroeder's role was. But the other part was he was reluctant to shoot when LeBron James needed him to shoot the most. And you did mention he did go missing in the playoffs. Now, mind you, I'm not sure how much was it due to the COVID incident he had, before the playoffs. And I think the second half of the season he was dealing with COVID. And not, when you deal with COVID, you don't know how that affects the player's body. But what does affect the situation is the fact of the Lakers didn't really speak highly of him, and this is not the first time this has happened. Like you say, other stops kind of wore his welcome thin. I thought he was going to end up in New York, and to be honest with you, if Kemba Walker wouldn't have gotten bought out and there was on the market for $8 million a year, I thought that was where Dennis Schroeder was headed to. It made sense. Now, what's left? Well, there is, I think, a 1-1 with a mid-level exception. And breaking news, it looks as though from David Aldridge of The Athletic that the Charlotte Hornets are in negotiations with Kelly Oubre, another guy we're about to mention, on top of being in negotiations with Lauri Markkanen. Now, both of them are restricted free agents. Charlotte has $13.5 million left to spend, and there's no market for anybody else because the only team with $10+ million is the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I can't see the Thunder spending anything less than spending money on Rumble the Bison at this point. Oubre thought he was an $18, $20 million player, but he didn't show anything in Golden State and lost time to a bunch of kids. Lauri Markkanen was just in a bad situation in Chicago. I think he can play, but he just didn't fit next to Vucevic. You can't have two guys that are not very good at defense playing the 4 or the 5. Somebody's got to defend. All right.
And the good thing about Chicago, I know you mentioned Charlotte, and we're talking about Charlotte, but the good thing about Chicago, with all the moves they made, they can still fill the holes that they have because they have their biannual exception still, I believe. And I think they still have their mid-level. So,
with Chicago?
Yeah.
I think Chicago has the 5.8 because I think they were a tax team last year. I'll check into that in a second. Charlotte still has the 9.7 because Charlotte was not a tax team last year. And I think they still have the biannual as well, too. Maybe if you can get Markkanen and Oubre and fit in that market, I'm just trying to figure out how that roster is going to be shaped. Because if Charlotte got one or both of those, that's going to be a weird roster fit.
But I mean, with LaMelo's the kind of point guard and the kind of player, I think you can meld almost anybody with them and make it work.
It's just the fact of you still have where's Markkanen going to play because you got PJ Washington, you have Miles Bridges, and if you add Kelly Oubre in the mix, how's that all going to work? I mean, Bridges did a bit of everything last year. Bridges played point, Bridges played shooting guard, Bridges played mascot. He did everything in the second half for Charlotte when they needed him. They lost Malik Monk and Devontae Graham, and good luck to Devontae out in New Orleans. I think he's going to be really good Pelicans fans. Don't worry.
I think that's going to be a good fit for him.
I like him out there. But Charlotte's just a weird fit, weird fit. And before we transition to baseball, and we're talking baseball tonight as well too, Courtlandt Summer League starts on Sunday. Yay! Bad basketball begins in the NBA on Sunday. I know Summer League in some cases in Salt Lake City and Sacramento got started earlier on this week, but really the main Summer League is out in Vegas because everybody's out in Vegas.
Right.
All right, Courtlandt, I'm going to give you 3 storylines in Summer League, and I want your thoughts on them. Storyline number 1, I think it's next Tuesday night, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, number 1 versus number 2, Pistons, Rockets. What are your thoughts on that being, one of the centerpiece games of Summer League?
It's going to be interesting. I think you've seen Cade Cunningham, number 1 overall pick, consensus best player in the draft in many circles. And then you have Jalen Green, who dressed like Michael Jackson at the draft, but also made the bold statement, I'm the best player in this draft. Now we get to see it because you got to go head up with a monster of a man playing point guard in Cade Cunningham. So it's going to be interesting to see that matchup. I really want to see how Cade Cunningham handles the pace of a NBA-style game. Jalen Green, I want to see how quickly he adjusts because he's played in the G League for a year with Ignite. So I want to see, is he faster than everyone else? Is it clicking better for him? Is it clicking quicker than everyone else for him? So it's going to be interesting to say the least. And also it's going to be interesting to see Cade Cunningham in a Pistons uniform whether it be summer league or not, playing an NBA game, because you can kind of gauge a player from their summer league play a little bit.
I will say is he'll have his buffs ready. If you're from Detroit, you know what buffs are. He'll be wearing them I think walking in the building. I think in this match we mentioned before, Jalen Green told me on draft night that he feel like he's one of the best players. He's the best player of the draft. He wants to be not only an all-star, but he wants to be all defensive team. He wants to guard the other team's best players. In the G League adjustment, this will be something that I think Courtlandt. This might be the second of the two storylines. The adjustment of the G League rookies. I call them the G League rookies because they're draft picks. The adjustment of not just Jalen Green but Jonathan Kuminga, because he's played pretty solid up in Sacramento, in the Sacramento Summer League. I want to see how. I think they had one more other kid that was drafted. I can't remember offhand who the other kid was. Because I know Knicks. I don't think Knicks got drafted, but I want to see how the adjustment of the G League guys go, because as we learned, in the Australia League last year with R.J. Hampton and LaMelo Ball, of course, those guys coming over after 1 year allowed those guys crawled so Josh Giddey could go drafted in the lottery. That's how I think of it. If LaMelo Ball and R.J. Hampton weren't successful in their first year, Josh Giddey would not have been a lottery pick. People thought Giddey was going in the bottom part of the lottery. He ended up going number 6 to Oklahoma City. In a great situation, by the way. I think the second storyline is, speaking of the Hornets and the Ball family, LiAngelo Ball we finally get a chance to see LiAngelo Ball. None of us have seen LiAngelo Ball play a single real game.
The dysfunctional brother.
The middle brother.
Dysfunctional one.
We're not listen. What he's gone through in his life, I can't really imagine. But he's known more for his time at UCLA for what happened overseas than he did on the court. Right. The last time we actually saw LaMelo Ball play a real game was when he was in Lithuania with his brother when he was in high school. It's been almost 4 years since LiAngelo Ball's played a real game, because he went to the JBL, and I don't count that. Scoring 55 points a game in games that they were scoring 190 points like this is freaking rock and jock basketball doesn't count much for me.
Right.
He spent time at Oklahoma City's G League team, did not play one single game because of the COVID situation. He went to Detroit's preseason camp last year, signed an Exhibit 10 contract, and lasted a grand total of 4 days. We don't know what LiAngelo Ball brings to the table, but what I can tell you is, and speaking to Hornets head coach Judge Daly the other day about LiAngelo Ball, he spoke to the media and said that LiAngelo Ball is a very, very good offensive rebounder. He says everybody knows about the shooting, but he's extremely strong and rebounds the ball very well in the offensive glass. He said the best way for players like LaMelo Ball or LiAngelo Ball to make the roster is to do little things, like play defense, knock down shots when the ball is given to him, and don't go looking for your shot, because there's enough guys in this roster that can give you 30 points on a nightly basis. We're not asking you to score. We're asking you just to do the little things we need to and knock down shots when the ball is given to you. The last thing about Summer League that I mean, as a topic of discussion, Courtlandt, is the length of Summer League. This is the shortest Summer League we have seen in Vegas since it's existed. Courtlandt, for you, are you going to be able to watch each team play 5 games in 8 days? They're treating this thing like it's a regular NBA season.
Yeah, it's going to be tough because.
Trust me, if you want to say bad basketball, you can say it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's going to be bad basketball, but I think what's going to be the draw, as you mentioned it, the G League players. We now get to see the Ignite players come in, play basketball, and get to see apples to apples what they're going to look like. Which one is better? We get an actual gauge this year. Which one is better? G League development, or is college development still reigning king? So we're going to get to see that this year. And I think that's a bigger storyline than any, because it's the one that's going to envelop everything. But also, Danny, one that you missed, the undrafted players. Kyrie Walker, undrafted. Mac McClung was undrafted. And Mac McClung played some very good basketball in, I want to say, it's not Nevada, it was the Sacramento Summer League, right?
Yeah,
so,
Sacramento had the Lakers.
Right. So he's played some very good minutes for that team. And then I want to see what Kyrie Walker, if he gets put on a summer league squad, what he'll be able to do, because he went undrafted and he's a guy who was torching the AAU circuit and torching high school basketball and then goes undrafted.
Well, I mean, it happens every single year. And when Kyle, we talked about every single year, and it's a great segue. We talked about free agency for the longest, but we talk about every year and trades and everything else in between. But baseball had the trade deadline. And my man AJ in the chat before we transfer into baseball, he said that Clay's returning, the Dubs are coming out of West. I mean, listen, we don't. I'll judge the Warriors, when we can figure out when Clay is coming back. That's when we'll figure this out. Because even with Clay and Trey and Steph, Wiggins, they have the kids. Wiseman's going to be the key to all this. Wiseman and the Kuminga and Mark will be extremely huge when it comes to where the Warriors finish. Because you ask me where the Warriors are going to finish right now, I don't know. I don't know, because there's too many questions. Is James Wiseman going to play? Is Klay Thompson healthy? We don't know.
Are they going to put James Wiseman in a deal and try to get assets back?
I mean, they're trying to. And the thing is, they're trying to acquire Ben Simmons at this point. The Warriors are trying to acquire Ben Simmons. If they can acquire Ben Simmons without having to trade Klay, Steph, or Dre, Ben Simmons and Draymond defensively, that is just ridiculous.
Right.
So I don't know. I guess let's get the training camp, and I can give you more about the Dubs then, because they're the biggest question mark for free agency. Now, mind you, I love the signing of Otto Porter. They got Porter for the cheap on the minimum, and Bjelica is a very, 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 very two good cheap players. Speaking of things that passed by, Court, let's talk about Major League Baseball. Well, we're going to talk about your Mookie Betts earlier. You played travel ball, Mookie Betts. We're going to one of your wheelhouse. I'm going to throw you that 3-1 foul down the center of the plate. Let's see how far you hit this. It's time to talk Major League Baseball. The trade deadline's passed. Teams made adjustments. We saw a World Series team from a few years ago basically implode and give everything away. They went basically full-fledged flea market in Chicago. Right. We saw one team in New York buy all the hitters. We saw the Dodgers do what the Dodgers do best, which is acquiring big-name players to their roster. Right. Courtland, you were talking about Major League Baseball throughout the trade deadline. Who was the biggest winner to you at the deadline, and who was the biggest loser to you at the deadline? Because I got some questions for you on this one. So the biggest winner is Chicago baseball as a whole. If you look at what happened, the White Sox got better, and the Chicago Cubs also, though they were on fire sale mode, they set themselves up for the future. Okay, so both teams made big moves. The White Sox got stronger in the pitching department. They also add Ryan Tepera and Craig Kimbrell. Those are good pickups. The Cubs dumped a lot of that 2016 team. If people remember that 2016, they won the World Series. They won, 103 games. They had every making of a dynasty. They dumped a lot of that team. A lot of those guys didn't live up to the contracts that they got. They didn't live up to the hype of that team. They've never been back. They've never been able to recapture that form. So they traded a lot of those guys, dumped a lot of those contracts, and got very good prospects back. So it looks bad on the front line. You're saying they're on fire sale mode. They pretty much got rid of everything. Everything must go. But it's the farm system. It's the prospects. And that's what baseball is about. So you build your team through your prospects and your farm system, and they got some really good ones back. The biggest loser to me is got to be the Rockies. And honestly, it's a tie. It's the Rockies and it's the Mariners. Okay. The Rockies, because they weren't able to move two of their top trade pieces, which is puzzling. The Yankees were in, and the Mets were looking into getting Story. They weren't able to get him, and I don't understand why. He doesn't want to be there.
He's one of the best shortstops in the game, and his services were needed with both teams. And both teams had deals on the table for him, and the Rockies never pulled the trigger. So that was puzzling. But then the Mariners, they trade their ace reliever and Kendall Graveman to their rival of the Astros. How much more asinine can you get? That's like trading Matt Ryan to the Panthers.
We know Matt Ryan.
You don't trade.
Listen, you cannot sit in the passenger seat of this plane with Matt Ryan slander. We will not do this on the show tonight. But continue.
No. I'm not. It's not slander. I'm saying it's like trading one of the best players in the division to your rival.
It's crazy. Not trading to the Kitties, but continue. I get your point.
So and then Jerry Dipoto, to top it all off, of the frustration of the Mariners franchise and the fan base, he pretty much gives we tried. So it just didn't make sense to me. You don't say in so many words, hey, we made the moves that we could, and you didn't make any moves at all. So the moves he made were horrible, and the Mariners didn't get better, they got worse. And you didn't get any good prospects back. You didn't get anything in return. So those are my two biggest losers and my biggest winner.
Here's my question. When you mentioned the Mariners making the trade for their closer, when you're 3 games out of the wild card, you have a chance to make the wild card. Normally, in most cases, you're looking at your team being a buyer. If you feel like you can make the playoffs, was it puzzling you they traded their closer because they're so close in the wild card chase? Is that the reason why they were losing, because they traded the closer in the middle of the wild card chase?
That is a bigger part. That's a big part, because you traded your ace. He's an ace closer. Kendall Graveman is an ace of a closer. Like, he's a guy that can be a starter and do well. But as a closer, the guy can end games. I put him in a poor man's Mariano Rivera type of situation. Like, he's that kind of player. But you're right. You're 3 games out of the wild card. You're dead smack in the race. And then the reliever that you got back is nowhere near the caliber of Kendall Graveman. You didn't add any offense. You didn't add anybody to strengthen the bullpen. You weakened your bullpen. And you kept the rest of the team the same. So it just didn't make sense.
Here's another thing that I want you to make sense for me, Courtlandt. If you can't make sense of this, if you can't make sense of what happened, make sense of this. The New York Yankees went out, and the Yankees did what the Yankees did best, but went out and going out and buying bats. Anthony Rizzo was one. Joey Bats Gallo, was the other one. It seems like the Yankees at the trade deadline every single year go out and try to buy hitting because they feel like they don't have enough of it. Courtlandt has a Yankee. I know you're a Yankees guy through and through. I don't know why, but unfortunately, since you're a Yankees fan, when you saw the moves for Rizzo, you saw the moves for Joey Gallo, what were your thoughts about it? Do you think they were the right moves, or would you have done something different if you were in the GM shoes?
I think they were the right moves. And the reason is because if you look at what they did, they got 2 lefty batters, and they needed that. I know people are going to talk about the pitching. I know people are going to say, they needed strength for the bullpen. It's always been an issue for us the last, 6-7 years. Mm-hmm. So people are going to talk about you should have went and got Max Scherzer. The issue with Max Scherzer is, are you trading for him because of what he has done, or are you trading for him for what he will do? So Max Scherzer's older. He's longer in the tooth. What he was doing with the Nationals was great. We'll see what he does with the Dodgers. But I don't blame them for not giving up half of your prospects that you're trying to develop to go get a guy who's on his second half of his career and may not be there next year. So I think their moves were the right moves. If you looked at where this team is right now, they're smack dab right in the playoff picture. I think they're 2.5, 3 games out of the wild card picture. I have to check again. But they can get there. They can get there with the best that they have. I think once they get the bullpen healthy, they have enough pitching to win playoff games. But the batting so far, they've scored. And Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge look rejuvenated because they don't have to carry the brunt of the rotation anymore.
I will say this. Pitching wins, offense wins games, pitching wins championships. And I still think the Yankees should have went out and gotten another pitcher because Max Scherzer should not have been sent to LA under any circumstances. You mentioned what Max Scherzer's done. Do you think the Dodgers made this move because that Trevor Bauer might not return to this team at all? Do you think that's why they went out and got Scherzer? Because Trevor Bauer is the highest paid pitcher in baseball.
Definitely. I think the Trevor Bauer situation is a prime reason. I think it's reason number one. I think also it's the Dodgers kind of flexing their muscle a little bit. If you look at what they've been able to do, getting Mookie Betts, getting all of those guys that they have out there, and then on top of that, you turn around and you say, hey, we don't have enough star power. Let's go get some more. So it's LA being an LA franchise. We see it with the Lakers. We see it with the Clippers, in other sports. It's just LA being LA. And the Dodgers, I think, were just kind of flexing their muscle. But Trevor Bauer is reason number one because we don't know if he's getting reinstated, what his situation is going to look like, and if he's going to return.
Here's my question. Do you think Trevor Bauer pitches another game in LA this season? Because they extended his leave for another week.
No, I don't think so. And I think it's just because of the uncertainty of the situation. And I think they're content with what they have in that bullpen. And I think you need to just let Trevor Bauer deal with Trevor Bauer right now.
I think what the Dodgers should have done. I mean, the Dodgers still didn't go get a closer. I don't believe Kenny Jansen's going to get this done in the playoffs. It's just he's too erratic in my eyes.
His control is some of the worst that I've seen.
It's like watching a streaky shooter in basketball or a quarterback that can just get hot at one point in time and then goes cold. In baseball, one pitch changes everything. In basketball, you can miss a couple shots here and there, and you still got opportunities. Your job as a closer in baseball is to get the last couple outs you need. Like you mentioned, Jansen's all over the place. Either he is on or he is off. It is rough.
The issue with Jansen, though, he rides the corners too hard. If you look at when he pitches, if you look at his pitch chart, he rides the corners, and that's where he likes to pitch, but his control is not there. So when he tries to ride that corner, it goes out. It goes down. He throws a lot of balls. So it's like I said, the situation is hindsight is always 20/20, but you don't need a closer if you're leading the game by 10 hits.
10 runs. Last but not least, before in baseball, let's talk about the Cleveland Guardians at this point.
Yes,
your thoughts on the Cleveland Guardians? What are your thoughts on it? Because
just the name itself.
Yeah, just the whole idea. I mean, I know why they changed the name, but I mean, I like the Cleveland Spiders.
I don't like the name Guardians. It's meh to me. It's one of those like it's almost like with the Washington football team situation.
Yeah,
we're waiting to see what that mascot name is going to be.
It better be the Red Tails. That's all I'm saying.
I hope it's the Red Tails. Mike Patton, I believe, is a Red Wolves fan. I think Kyle is also a fan of the Red Wolves.
No, Kyle's a fan of the Red Tails. We have talked about it. We are pro Red Tail in the show.
Yeah, I want the Red Tails as well.
If I can't get the Washington Sentinels, I want the Washington Red Tails. I want to go full replacements.
But with the Cleveland Guardians name, it to me it just doesn't resonate with the city. It doesn't have any regional relevance. Like there's rumors of an expansion team maybe for Nashville Stars. It has regional relevance here. New York Yankees has regional relevance. The Guardians, what are you guarding?
I guess they're guarding the fact that they're letting players go like Francisco Lindor. Hey, Francisco, big shout out. Yeah, I think it's kind of weird to me. I'm not a big fan of the Guardians, and then the whole video with Tom Hanks just weirded me out as well too.
Yeah, it was horrible.
I mean, couldn't they have felt like Steve Harvey or Machine Gun Kelly or even Drew Carey? I don't know. You know, they could have got Bob Uecker from the Major League movies. There we go.
But believe it or not, a lot of the fans were really upset that the Indians' name was taken away, and there were a couple of Native Americans that came to the defense of the Indians moniker and said that it wasn't offensive to them. So it was
Here's my thoughts on that part. 95% of the people in the Native American community have been complaining about the team names for years. Braves, Indians, Redskins. They have complained for years that that's very offensive. So I'm sorry. I understand the values of some, but when the mass majority say we don't like it, then guess what? We just don't like it. Now, I could have picked a better name than the Spiders. I don't know. Oh, look who's in the chat. Rodney finally shows up. We're waiting for Rodney to show up, and he says that Steve Harvey's annoying. I would like him. All right, you know what? We're not doing this tonight, Rodney. What we will do tonight is, since you stepped in there, we'll talk about some ACC football. Rodney went to Clemson, ladies and gentlemen, so we do feel bad for him. But we do feel bad for him on the basketball front. But on the football front, listen, the ACC, as you see on the bottom of the ticker, has been the controlling factor of college football in that conference for the longest. Clemson's been running shop. Dabo Swinney has been doing Dabo Swinney things. And Courtlandt, you were at ACC Media Day. We didn't get a chance to get a hold of you last week on the show, but you were with not just Dabo Swinney, but the rest of the coaches and players who were in Charlotte for the Media Day. Honestly, I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions before we jump off the air. Number one, is there anybody that's going to give Clemson a run for their money? Because Clemson seems like they're poised, even without Trevor Lawrence or any of the major quarterbacks they've had, just to basically destroy the ACC again this year. Is there any hope? Notre Dame was supposed to be the hope last year. It didn't happen.
There's three teams. Seeing these guys face to face, 2 weeks ago at the ACC kickoff was amazing. First of all, but also I got to see these guys and kind of pick their brains. The three teams that stood out to me the most were Miami, who I give the third best chance. That defense is elite. It has a lot of talent. And that offense is going to be a lot better. De'Aaron King will be healthy this year, and they have some pretty good receivers and pretty good running backs down there. They also have one of the best tight ends in college football. So check out three-point conversion, positional big board for tight ends. He's on that list. The second team I have, Florida State, believe it or not. That defense will be much improved. And then Mackenzie Milton, who I think will be to go into the season as a starter. That kid has a lot of swagger about him. He has a way that he carries himself, and he's going to bring Florida State football back. They're very well coached as well. The team that I have that I think is going to dethrone them is the North Carolina Tar Heels. Matt Brown has that team coached very well. The defense is solid. They have one of the best pass rushers in college football. No UNC cheeks. Miami is cocaine hype. Anyway, and then you have the best quarterback in the nation in Sam Howell. So just looking at that, and then Ty Chandler, who's a dark horse who Mac Brown talked glowingly about. He said he's somewhere in between the two running backs that they lost to the draft. So think about that. Those two guys were very good last year. And if this guy's a mixture between the two, the sky's the limit. I'm sorry, I'm boring you, Danny.
Oh no! I'm too busy. I'm too busy laughing at Rodney's comment because Miami's full of cocaine and hype. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah,
All right,
hilarious.
so you mentioned the fact of McKenzie Milton. McKenzie Milton, former UCF starting quarterback, Heisman Trophy candidate a few years ago, suffered one of the most grueling injuries. Live in person replay that you'll ever see a player. He's come back from that. Couldn't regain the starting job at UCF because Dylan Gabriel's about to break every single school record, so he goes to Florida State. The issue I have with Florida State has been the common concern, Colin, I've talked about, is the fact that the offensive line is trash. And McKenzie Milton's situation is kind of like Alex Smith was with Washington. He's got to have an offensive line to protect him, otherwise he doesn't have the mobility to get out of the pocket. Now you mentioned McKenzie's swagger is on 1,000. The kid's super confident, and you just feel like he can go to war with you at every single possession. You want to go to war for this kid. The offensive line is not very good. I'm very about that one. So here I have two other teams, Courtland. Now, what's your thoughts on these two teams? Number one, the team I like Virginia, actually. I like Virginia. They've been solid. They've been playing some solid football the last few years. They've lost position players to the NFL, but the thing is, what Virginia's always done is they brought their A game on a regular basis. North Carolina, as much as I bleed Carolina blue, is always up and down. Sam Howell is an outstanding quarterback, and he should be the first quarterback taken in the 2022 NFL draft. But they did lose some talent at wide receiver. Like you said, they have a new running back in the saddle, and Sam Howell hasn't won the big one yet. He hasn't won that elite game to put him in that stature. Now, the other team I'm going to watch this year, outside of UVA, I love watching some of that option football down in Georgia Tech.
Oh yeah,
it's boring to some, very interesting, and it gets the people going. I think Georgia Tech might be able to surprise a few teams, but I'm not sure. And what are your thoughts on Dabo Swinney? Because I know you had a chance to talk to Dabo at ACC Media Day, the kickoff. What are your thoughts on Clemson? Like I said, we talk about how Clemson is the favorite, but how do you feel about Clemson this year? Can they win the national championship?
Can they win the national championship? They have a fighter's chance. I'm going to pull a card from one of my favorite reporters, Chris Broussard. I give him a puncher's chance. Getting face-to-face with Dabo Swinney, I had respect for him going into that event. I have way more respect for him now as a man and as a coach than I had before. He's every bit of steely-eyed, focus, and you can tell the reason why that team is so successful. It has nothing to do with just the X's and O's. It has everything to do with the man that he is and how he reflects that team. But those players, when they got up there, they weren't nervous. They were confident in the product that they were planning to put out on the field this fall. So they're still the class of the ACC. They're still the class and part of the upper crust of NCAA football. So, yes, they're going to have a chance. But we have to see Alabama is still there. Ohio State still exists. So those teams are always there. And then with the expanded playoff, who knows? But I give them a puncher's chance.
I will say this. DJ, there was and Corley, pronounce his last name for me because I'm gonna probably butcher it.
Ugalele.
Thank you, DJ Ugalele. He played. The one thing that DJ has that he played in a big moment. He played that Notre Dame game when he played the game when Trevor Lawrence was out. So this isn't a situation that he's walking into it brand new because he's played some big time football games. I think he's gonna be really good. Is it gonna be Trevor Lawrence? That's unfair. It's unfair to say it's gonna be Trevor Lawrence. Because, Courtland, how many players are Trevor Lawrence in football when it comes to
None.
do that?
But here's the thing. When we were there, seeing him on TV is different than seeing DJ Ugalele in person. He's all of 6'5", 250 pounds. He looks like he should be rushing the passer than being the passer.
Here, when I watched him play, here's my question. I don't know if he's Cam Newton, but he reminded me a lot of Dante Culpepper.
Yes.
Do you get that vibe from him?
He's built like Dante. He has an arm like Dante. I think he's as mobile as Dante. So yeah, I'll give you that. He's the Polynesian sauce, Cam Newton.
Because Rodney had mentioned the fact he's like Cam Newton. I think he's more
First
accurate
of all,
I think he's more accurate.
Let me correct Rodney. He's the Bo Sauce, Cam Newton. He's a Bojangles affiliate.
The Bo Sauce. I think isn't he representing Bojangles as well too?
Yes, he's a Bojangles affiliate.
I mean, so wow. Not sure where that comes from. But at the end of the day, Courtlandt, is there any players in the ACC that you want to that people should watch out for that don't get the chance to see that should tune into? Is there a couple players that you are you're going to watch on Saturdays?
Jeff Sims. Jeff Sims is he's as good a quarterback as you can get in the ACC so far. Last year he was a freshman, passed for 1,800 yards. I'm sorry?
What school is he at?
Georgia Tech.
Okay.
When I talked to him, the first question that I asked him was a lot of scouting circles have him as a very close comparison to one Lamar Jackson. He said, I'm not Lamar Jackson. I don't like to be compared to anyone else. I'm Jeff Sims. That told me all I needed to know about that kid. He has a swagger. Coach Collins, is it Phillips? I'm going to say it's Jeff Phillips or Jeff Collins. I can't remember his last. It's Collins. Had a lot to say about him. He's spoke glowingly about Sims. And he loves him. He loves the guy he is. He said he's always picking the coach's brains. He's always in the meeting rooms. He's always watching tape. So expect that guy to be as good a second-year true sophomore and one of the better quarterbacks in college football. You should just go check him out. I don't care if you're a fan of Georgia Tech football or not. Check Jeff Sims out. He can do it all.
Is there anybody on defense that you want that people should look out for?
No one in particular, but I think you should just take out Miami defense altogether. They have a lot of guys on that defense that are going to make a lot of big plays. And I think it's going to be exciting because you're going to see Hurricane football return. Those bruising defenses that play, those bruising defenses, take out the turnover chain. Like those early 2000s teams, this Miami team can be reminiscent of that.
On the defensive side of the ball, correct?
On the defensive side of the ball.
Okay, because the offensive side of the ball, as much as I love De'Aaron King, I don't know if they got Clinton Portis in them sitting in that backfield. Andre Johnson, those guys.
But watch out for De'Aaron King. De'Aaron King, I think, is going to prove a lot of doubters wrong.
As long as he gets healthy. That's the one thing about King, is as long as he's on the field. All right, Courtlandt, we got about maybe 90 seconds before we jump out of here. Like I said, before we go, any shout-outs, anything on your chest you want to get off before we go tonight?
Shout out to my wife, my beautiful wife, Jade. Without her, I wouldn't even be doing sports reporting. She's the one that pushed me to do this, so she's watching. Shout out to her. Shout out to the 3-point conversion for giving me an opportunity to realize the dreams. Shout out to the big bro. Oh, he's on this side of me. Danny Thompson for having me on the show. But also for the people that don't know, ever since I started doing this, and even before that, I went up against Danny in Battlegrounds, and ever since then, Danny has – I didn't watch anybody.
Don't let him judge you. Continue.
But Danny has been a guiding force for me as far as like being able to pick his brain and call him up. So shout out to Danny. And shout out to Kyle if he's watching. This seat is a lot hotter than it seems being in the chat.
You know, and big shout out to Courtlandt. Thanks for stopping through today and saying, you know, that Kyle enjoys some family time, some much needed family time. Kyle's one of the hardest working guys that he steps in the seat. When I was out, he took the lead role. He's always interacting with everything he does, and so Kyle needed some time off. He needed it. I'm surprised he showed up in the chat tonight just to even say hi. But like I said, big shout outs to everybody that was in the chat tonight. Rodney, even Raphael, controversy Raphael, because I'm calling his stage name, stopped through Mike Patton, Carlos Johnson. Like I said, everybody for just stopping through tonight. Like I said, big shouts to all the people who liked the show, tagged the show, shared the show, and anything. I guess lastly to get off my chest. Well, I'm so frustrated with Nicholas Batum right now because it was so frustrating. So let me take 10 seconds to speak about this. Nicholas Batum saved France this morning. I mean, in epic fashion. If you have a chance, if you have the Peacock Network, I think they're going to have the Slovenia-France game on Peacock, or find a way of watch this game. And I've watched my share of Olympic basketball in my, I'm not going to tell you I'm using this planet. Let's say I'm younger than Raphael, and I'm younger than Ted Hicks. All right? So I didn't go to school with Methuselah. All I'm saying is, in all my years of watching Olympic basketball in Courtlandt, this was the best game I've ever watched in Olympic basketball. Like, as far as both teams go, I watch everything Team USA plays, but this was the best. And the way it happened was epic. It was Luka had the ball. I mean, Courtlandt, Luka Doncic had a triple-double, but it was the most unorthodox triple-double ever because he didn't get his 10th rebound at the end of the game. He had 18 assists. 16 or 17 points, also hurt his wrist by running into plexiglass in the fourth quarter. You had 2 technical fouls called in the final 5 minutes of the game, a back-and-forth affair, and it came down to Luka being double-teamed and giving it off to one of his teammates who had a layup that Nicholas Batum got lost and caught him from behind to block the ball a la LeBron James style off the backboard, because it does in FIBA, to save the game, which was Batum's 4th block of the game.
Yeah.
Epic game. It was just a phenomenal game. Blazers and Hornets fans are looking on Twitter like, what the hell just happened? And where was this guy? It's like, we talk about FIBA Fournier, FIBA Batum. Anytime international play, Nicholas Batum is everywhere. So I had to get it off my chest. Batum was phenomenal. And that gold medal game is on tomorrow night, 10:30. It should be NBC tomorrow night. I don't think I've heard anything different. But we get to watch it at a decent hour instead of watching it at 12:45 in the morning.
Shout out to Team USA women's basketball. Is France and Team USA on men's side, and France and Team USA, I believe, on the women's side, or the opportunity to be France and Team USA on the women's side?
Well, they play tonight. They play Serbia tonight at 12:40 with a chance for the gold medal game. Either going against the home country, Japan, who surprised Belgium, or they take on, like I said, France, which would be kind of ironic to have the United States men's and women's team both play in France for a gold medal. If you have a chance, 12:40 tonight, it's on Peacock. Check them out. I know it's Peacock. Another streaming app. I get it. All right. Well, like I said, big shouts to everybody in the chat tonight. Like I said, we went 2 minutes over because we ain't paying for airtime. So for myself, Courtlandt, you know where to find us on Twitter. Like I said, we appreciate the love and support. Catch you guys next week for Beyond the Buzzer when Kyle's back in the hot seat. We'll catch you guys later. Stay safe out there. Peace.